Hello everyone and welcome to The Art of Teaching Art. I'm Mrs. Darby and today I'm going to show you how to draw a tool from observation using base units to help you keep the correct proportion. So this is my example here. I've tried to sketch it out the same size as the image I was drawing from, and I've added a range of tones. I've tried to add my 5 tones here. If you want to learn more about shading, I will put a card above so you can look at the basic shading video to help you practice to get your range of tones. So when we're thinking about this, the first thing we need to do is make sure that we're drawing it in proportion. So that means that one small section of the picture is in proportion to the rest of the drawing. So the length, the width of the different shapes as part of the image are correct. So what you will do is select something called a base unit. Now a base unit is something you use to measure against other pieces of the object to keep it in proportion. So for example, the first line you draw might be this line here. That then becomes your base unit, so you can measure it with your fingers or with a ruler and kind of keep that in mind when you're drawing out the other sections. So if you look at your photograph, your base unit is this, so you measure this and then you work out how many of these shapes fit into the length of the handle. So I'm measuring it with my fingers, 1, 2, and just a little bit. So that will give me the length of the handle. The same here. How long is the distance between here and here? It's about the same as the base unit you've chosen. And this, so half and then half of the base unit might be the same as the distance here. So by selecting one section and using that to measure your proportions across the drawing is going to help you keep your drawing accurate. Now I'm going to draw this pair of scissors here. So the first thing will be to think about the basic shapes. So when we look at a pair of scissors, we've got a long rectangle here, kind of a rectangular shape here with a pointy end, and a circle shape and an oval shape. So that's going to help us to actually draw out the shape. So whenever you're drawing something, as well as choosing a base unit, you want to break it down into basic shapes. So for this, you've got a circular shape at the top here and a long rectangle with a rounded bottom. So for this activity, you are going to need a picture to draw from. You are going to need a selection of pencils and some paper to work on. So first up, I'm just using the pencil to measure the angles. So just lying the pencil down to check the angles with my page. Now I'm using the smaller circle as my base unit. So I'm just comparing that smaller circle to the larger oval to get the size of both of those on the 2 lines I've drawn. So just drawing in the rest of the handle there and coming upwards and using the smaller circle to gauge the length of the scissors first of all, and then using the smaller circle again for the other side. So just drawing kind of rectangular shapes with pointy ends really here. And then onto the handle, again, I'm using the pencil to judge the angle. Can't quite get the length of those scissors right, so I just corrected it. And then continuing with the other handle. So looking really carefully at the shape, looking at the twists and turns of that handle there. So again, just checking the proportion. Didn't quite get the length of the scissors right, so it's always fine to get things wrong and then correct them. It's all part of the learning process with drawing. And now just adjusting the shape, adding those final details. So there's a few little details that I didn't notice the first time, but I've looked more carefully and then I've added in other details as well. Now I'm just using the rubber to clean up the image. So I had quite a few sketchy lines and it's easier to shade if the image is a little bit cleaner. So just making alterations to the image as I go, as I notice extra details and just find things that I need to change. So just finishing off, rubbing out the additional lines to clean up the image and just adding in any final details as well. So I just noticed I made that shape there wrong, so I've straightened it out a little bit to just sort it out, and then I'm adding just the edge of the scissors. There was a bit there that made it look more 3D, so I've just added that in as well. So now moving on to the shading, so nice and smoothly in one direction. I'm using a 2B pencil and I'm looking really carefully at the dark and light areas. So it starts off darker and there's that area of shine in the middle, and I'm just building up layers of tone to get those darker areas as well. So working bit by bit down the image, working on the screw there, adding the detail. So starting with the darker areas, then adding a base layer of tone before working over the top of it. Now that other blade is a lot darker, so base layer goes down first of all, and then I work on top of it, building up the tone to make it darker. Now it does look completely dark, but there are some variations there. There are some lighter areas, so I want to make sure that I'm adding those, and I'm just neatening up the edge with the small rubber. Now moving down onto the handle, now this bit was quite tricky, so you need to make sure in this area that you leave the highlights completely free of any pencil and then add the dark areas. So my process here was to add the dark areas first, leaving the highlights, and then blend using the middle tones. And they were quite tricky because they turn in different ways, and that was a little troublesome to add the tone for those areas. So just finishing off that handle now and moving on to the other handle. So starting with the darkest area first and then moving down onto the rest of the handle. So adding the darkest areas, leaving the highlights, and then adding the middle tones first of all. So nice and smoothly with the pencil on those areas as well. Just adding those final details. You can use the small rubber to just rub away any areas that need to be lighter and also to clean up your drawing. Now I'm just going in with the 4B pencil now to add the darkest areas. So I'm just adding to the areas that are the darkest. I'm looking really carefully at my image to do this. This is going to help to add a really lovely contrast to the drawing, just sharpening and neatening and adding those final touches, those dark areas. So I've got that range of 5 tones. So just using the rubber to clean up the image now and finishing it off. And there we go, is my completed drawing of scissors with a range of tones. Thank you so much for watching and have a really great day.